Which episode is this?
That is a good question, but we are recording. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, we are trying our first ever broadcast on Zoom. Well, I mean, the last episode I tried Zoom by myself. This is the first time that Matt and I are trying Zoom. So far, Matt, it seems to be working. I can see you just fine. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you just fine. So let's see how this plays out. Yeah.
All righty. Well, Matt, go ahead and tell everybody at home what you've been up to. I mean, I kind of filled them in a little bit on the last episode, but what are you doing these days over there in Arkansas?
Well, at the moment, just working at my old job again. Going to be going to school full time in a couple weeks. We got the podcast up and going again. Been doing a bunch of workouts. There you go.
Pumping some iron?
Trying to. So
there you go.
Other than that, just settling back in over here. Almost feels like I hadn't left, but that's what the year 2020 has brought, and we just got to adapt and overcome now.
Well, yeah, because technically you lived here in California for what, 10 months, 11 months?
I think it was 11 months.
Yeah.
That's just shy of a year.
It went by fast, I'll tell you.
It felt like it was a lot longer then. It really was.
Yeah. Well, the whole year 2020 felt that way.
Yeah. Especially our time at the club. You know what I'm talking about.
Death Valley.
I used to be happy.
Yeah, well, I think we both agreed that the next episode we would be diving into the country club life, our last job that we thankfully were able to get out of from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a juicy one, folks. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that one. It's going to be very interesting. Well, man, I'm glad to hear that everything's going well for you over there. I'm proud of you for going back to school. Keep at it. Believe me, it will be worth it. But for the time being, I want to talk San Diego Padres.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I got one thing to say before we get started, okay?
What's that?
In honor of the show being back on, I had this saved up. I got a Coors.
So, oh my gosh. Has that been sitting next to you this entire time? I've been trying to get this off and running.
Yeah, it's almost warm now because it's been like 2 hours since we've been fiddling, but
yeah. True story.
But hey.
Well, I don't have a beer with me, but I got my water, so cheers.
There you go. Cheers.
It's just like how we started our very first ever episode, right? We took shots.
Yeah, exactly. And for the boys of Arkansas, yes, this is leftover beer from the last party. I still have some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so before Matt and I started recording this episode, we were having a heck of a time. Zoom was just not working for us. Matt's screen was just all fuzzy. His audio wasn't coming in. And then we tried recording on Google Hangouts or Google Meets, I think is what it's called. And we couldn't figure out how to record off of there. So then we ended up coming back to Zoom. And so far, so good, Matt. It seems to be working all right. So
yeah, you better knock on some wood.
Yeah.
Knock on some wood.
There you go. Crossing my fingers now we're going to make it. So, yes, we're going to be talking some San Diego Padres, Matt, because, well, they've been very busy this week. They made 3, count them 3, transactions this week that caught everyone's attention, especially in the baseball world. Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess we can start with the Blake Snell trade because that was the first one, the first trade that went down. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts on that trade, Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, so the Padres made a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays. They got former Cy Young Award winner Blake Snell, and in exchange, the Padres sent the Rays Luis Patino, one of the Padres' top pitching prospects, along with Francisco Mejia, a catcher that has done absolutely nothing in his couple years with San Diego. And I believe, Matt, they sent over a couple other young prospects that we have no idea about yet because they're like in single or double A or their
Well,
team.
I'm pretty sure one of them was a pitcher that was just drafted this season.
Yeah, that's right. They were
So
drafted this year or this past year, 2020. So,
yeah,
a couple of young kids that it's a total crapshoot. You have no idea what to expect from those. So, my thought on it is I like the deal because, first and foremost, we just saw Blake Snell absolutely dominate the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series about 2 months ago. So, just the fact that we know that he's not intimidated by that Dodger lineup, because it is a pretty stacked lineup, let's be honest. We know that he can handle him. He doesn't crumble under the pressure, clearly, because the entire postseason he was phenomenal. So
yeah,
that to me is the type of guy I want. We're not trading for a Clayton Kershaw type who usually comes up small in the big moments. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's worth it to trade for a Snell. Does it hurt to give up Patino? Yes, because we've been hearing so much about him over the last couple of years. And I do believe that he is going to be an exceptional pitcher. But Matt, the thing is, how many of these young hotshot pitchers from the Padres system have either had to have had Tommy John surgery while they're in the minors or sometime after they get called up? It seems like every year there's a new guy that gets hurt. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Patino, and I hope it doesn't for his sake. But you never know with these young pitchers. They've been throwing so many innings starting at a young age. So you really don't know what you're getting. I think he's only, 20 or 21 years old, but he's probably already thrown a ton of innings starting when he was a teenager. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, he could go on to win 5 Cy Young Awards, and that's going to suck. But ultimately, we know what we have in Blake Snell. And the Padres are clearly going for it. They're all in. So I'm all right with it. What are your thoughts on it?
I agree with you. I definitely think it was the time to pull the trigger, especially after the news of Clevenger being out for the year next season. They need to make a move for sure with their pitching rotation, and they got arguably one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's easily a top 10 or 15 pitcher. So adding him on the top of the rotation is big time. And like you said, we need Dodger killers, and he's definitely one of them. So he's a winner too. He can tell he's super excited to be here. So or there now, but so yeah, it's exciting.
And he's a left-hander, and a lot of the Dodgers hitters are left-handed.
Exactly. So I think the biggest thing too is that we didn't give up like a player like Mackenzie Gore or someone that's like number 1 or 2 in the prospect list. So we gave up like Patino is a quality prospect for sure, but for Blake Snell getting 3 years of control, I definitely think it was worth it. So my hat goes out to AJ Preller on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. He is under control for the next 3 years. And honestly, it comes at a pretty affordable price for a Cy
For a
Young.
Cy,
Yeah,
for a Cy Young winner.
exactly.
Sure.
I believe in the next 3 years he's due to make, what is it, like 60 million or something like that. It's not a ton for,
Might even be less than that.
yeah, it might even be less than that. I can't remember. Maybe I'm thinking of you, who we're going to get to next. But either way, he's very affordable and he's under control for the next 3 years. So that's another reason why I like it. If he was only under contract for one more year, I'd probably be much more hesitant on pulling this deal off. But considering that you got 3 years with them, who knows? Maybe they can work out something to extend him even longer than that. But either way, I mean, 3 years, you got to feel pretty good about that. Because I feel like for right now, that's kind of where the Padres window is. Hopefully, it's longer than that. But clearly, they are trying to win right now.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, they're definitely trying to go for it now. And to that, I salute them, because over the past couple of years, they've been making an acquisition, whether in free agency or by trade, every offseason. And it's like now it's just at the tipping point where, they got to do it now or it's not going to happen. So
Because look, the
I
Padres
think
have been the only team that has made any sort of move so far this offseason. And they've made 3 significant ones.
exactly. There's literally nothing else we can talk about baseball other than what the Padres have done. So
Everybody's sitting on their hands, but not the Padres, man. They just saw the Dodgers, their rival, go out and win the World Series, and they're like, no, we're not going to take that. We're going to come back bigger, badder, and stronger.
yeah. Well, of course, if you ask any Dodger fan, they don't really like the moves, or they say, whatever. But
yeah, believe me, I see it on Twitter, Matt. You know how big I am on Twitter with the sports followers, and it just seems like every Dodger fans, it's like, oh, whatever, we're not scared, bring it on. Their Padres are still the Padres, they're still our stepchild, and I'm like, okay,
well, all I
you'll
gotta say
see.
is that even though it may have been a 60-game season this past season, they were still the second best team in the National League, and we made it to the postseason. We won a round, so it's not like before, where we were like bottom feeders and they were on top.
Well, yeah,
We're almost neck and neck now.
and the Padres are still a young team, and this was for a lot of those guys, like Fernando Tatis, for example, their first ever experience in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're only going to move up from there. Now, Matt, one thing I wanted to bring up was Snell, because I heard this from Darren Smith, who you know is a local radio host here in San Diego, and he brought up an interesting point, I thought, was that career-wise, Snell has only averaged about 5 innings throughout his career per start. Now, we understand why that is for the most part, because that's kind of the way the Rays run things. They don't like to have their starters go very far. I mean, honestly, a lot of their starters will only go like an inning or two, and they'll just be an opener. So
Yeah.
Snell, he's kind of been caught up in that system there in Tampa where they don't really allow him to go deep into games. So he brought up an interesting point. He's like, look, I'm not saying one way or the other, but it does beg the question, well, can Blake Snell go 6 or 7 or even beyond innings per start, considering that he was never allowed to do it? And can his arm actually handle it? I thought that was kind of an interesting point.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. I didn't even think of it that way. But because everyone talks about what Kevin Cash, the Tampa Bay Rays manager, did in the World Series, polling him.
Did shit.
Yeah, exactly. But but yeah, that's a good point though. But I feel like our manager, Jace Tingles, I feel like that he's kind of one of those modern baseball managers where he might do some of the similar stuff, and the fans like us will probably not like it as much. But I mean, my whole philosophy is if he's doing good, I mean, just leave him in there. But
right.
And then, because I hate it when like managers in baseball overmanage, because that just kind of kills momentum. And more times than not, that backfires. So, yeah, I guess we just have to monitor that.
Well, and the other side of the argument is the Rays possibly did the Padres a favor by not allowing him to throw many innings, because we're talking about a guy who I believe is 28, Matt, somewhere in the late 20s now. And he hasn't thrown a ton of innings in his career, which is honestly, in my opinion, a good thing, because usually when you acquire a guy that has thrown a ton of innings, you kind of are just waiting for that arm to blow at any moment. So considering that his innings have been limited, there's not a lot of wear and tear on that arm. I feel like maybe the Rays did the Padres a favor, honestly.
It's funny you say that, because that reminds me of an old Padres acquisition from 2015 and James Shields, who we also got from the Rays. Because remember, we acquired him and he fell off a cliff as soon as he joined the Padres. So, yeah.
But James was like, what, 33 or 34 years old, I think?
Well, that's true, but he had a lot more innings in him. That's what I'm saying. Like, Snell is young and fresh.
And Shields was a part of 2 World Series runs with the Rays and the Royals, where he was just throwing a ton of innings during those seasons, because obviously when your team makes the playoffs, you're throwing a lot more. So I'm honestly not worried about Snell. I just thought it was an interesting point. Like, yeah, we don't know exactly how his arm is going to handle extra work. I think he'll be fine. He seems like the type of guy, like a bulldog, where he's like, give me the ball, I'm going to go the distance, even though he's never thrown a complete game in his career. But again, that's more to do with the Rays more so than himself. So I'm not worried
Yeah.
about it. I think it actually might be a good thing, but it is something I think we should keep in mind heading into this next season to see how the Padres monitor that and how much they will extend them in games.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I think a lot of it comes down to managing. So I think, the role that the pitching coach and Chase Tingler has, that will play a big factor with, his innings and such.
Right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next acquisition that happened, like what, the day after they acquired Snell, I believe.
Yeah.
You Darvish, you from the Chicago Cubbies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could make a case. I believe he was the runner-up in the National League Cy Young race this past season in 2020. Definitely can make an argument that he should have won it. I mean, he had a hell of a season and really has had a heck of a career, as we know, dating back to when he was on the Texas Rangers. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on Yu Darvish? I mean, he's a little different than Snell in the sense that he's older. I believe he's 35. So there's
Yeah.
definitely more wear and tear on his arm, but he's coming off of, I believe, the best season of his career. So, what are your thoughts on the trade?
Well, I mean, I love it just because that, there's only so many pitchers that are on the market, whether it's free agency or by trade. And them acquiring both Snell and, of course, Darvish now, they got arguably two of the best three pitchers there is to get. So I like it. They have to take a risk, and hopefully it pans out with Darvish. But he was great for the Cubs last season. So,
Oh, yeah, he was outstanding.
and he has a great track record, of course, with Texas, as you mentioned, and Chicago. So I like it. It's just going to be another arm, and we need more arms. That's the biggest need the Padres need was starting pitching, and I wouldn't mind them getting more bullpen as well. But
Yeah.
I think it was a solid move overall there, and also they didn't give up like any of their top prospects really, or not anyone in their top 10. So
Yeah, and that was going to be the next thing I was going to bring up is I honestly almost love this trade even more than the Snell trade just because it didn't cost the Padres any of their top 10 prospects.
yeah,
I mean, the three guys that they traded, well, they traded four guys, but the three prospects that they traded are all, I believe, 17 or 18 years old, and they're shortstops, or two of them are
yeah,
shortstops. And I'm pretty sure the Padres are set at shortstop for a good long while, Matt, with Fernando Tatis. So I have no
hopefully
problem
for
at
the
all
next 10
trading
years.
those guys away. And then the fourth guy they traded was Zach Davies, who, to his credit, was very solid for the Padres in 2020. He did a fantastic job. You can make an argument behind Lamet. He was probably their best pitcher, I think.
Yeah,
But I mean, Zach Davies is kind of a journeyman, I guess you would say. Like he's a solid, kind of back end rotation type of guy, maybe middle. But I have no issue trading away a Zach Davies for a Yu Darvish. I mean, that's an upgrade no matter how you slice it.
yeah. Well, talent wise, yeah, that's Darvish is definitely the better pitcher than Davies. No disrespect to Davies because he was, like you said, he was very good for us last year. He served his role very well.
It's kind of
But no,
weird. Like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, getting a guy like Darvish, he's a runner up for the Cy Young, so you gotta pull the trigger there.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of interesting that the Cubs even wanted Zach Davies. Because clearly they're just trying to shred payroll. I don't know if they're trying to make it look like that they're to their fans anyway. They're going to try to stay competitive in some capacity, but it's pretty clear that the Cubs are trying to get rid of some money, and they're trying to trade off some of these guys that have been there. I know they've been trying to get rid of Chris Bryant for a while, Kyle Schwarber. Who knows? Maybe Anthony Rizzo could be on the move. We don't know. I mean, from what I've been hearing, it sounds like the Cubs are facing like extreme financial hardship right now. I don't know why. I don't know if it just comes down to what just happened this past year with no fans in the stands or what.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of funny to me how they were like, oh, we'll take Zach Davies. It almost to me seems like, oh, well, we'll just take our chances and hope that he'll have like a career year, like kind of what you just did for them. But Matt, the Padres also got Victor Carantini, which I think was worth bringing up because he was used personal catcher last season.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there you go. They can start him, every fifth day, I suppose, with Darvish. Kind of like what that one catcher was, the AJ Ellis to Clayton Kershaw. You can kind of have that with Darvish and Victor. Yeah, so that was a solid pickup as well. I mean, because obviously the Padres have been needing catcher help for God knows how long now. So yeah, that's a good move as well. That I forgot about that while we've been talking, but
yeah, I mean, he's not a guy that's gonna get anybody super excited. I was looking at his batting average from last year, and I think he hit like in the low 200s or something like that. So I mean, he's not gonna provide much as far as offense goes. But I mean, considering that you clearly loved pitching to him and had the best year of his career throwing to that man, absolutely, you take him on in that trade.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, we did acquire Austin Nola from Seattle last year, but he kind of batting wise, he wasn't much of a help there. So it's another person there. Throw him in the fire, see if he does something. All I know is that for the Padres, really the catcher position was the only spot where nobody was hitting at, but everyone else was teeing off on opposing pitchers. So
yeah. And honestly, they don't need much production. I mean, if they could just find somebody that can hit even like 240, 250-ish.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere around there and occasionally hit a home run. I mean, that's all we need. We don't need a catcher like JT Realmuto, which would be great to have, but we don't necessarily need a guy like that because from top to bottom, the Padres lineup is pretty solid.
You don't want to be like Austin Hedges.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. You just need somebody that's a little bit better than Austin Hedges, which shouldn't be that difficult to do because Austin Hedges hit what, like $120 last season?
If even that. It's probably
he had like one hit with the Cleveland Indians after he got traded.
It's a shame because he was a hell of a defensive catcher, but
yeah,
offensively, he's like one of the worst hitters ever to hit the diamond.
I mean, he was practically, like throwing a pitcher out there to hit. I mean, that's pretty much what he was. It was just an automatic out. And you can't have a guy like that in the lineup every day. You just can't.
Agreed.
All right, Matt. Well, the last move we wanted to get into was the Korean Ha-Seong Kim.
Yeah.
He hit 294 with 30 bombs last season. And I believe he's only 25. So he's still a young guy. He's a star over there in South Korea. I mean, personally, I'm intrigued by it. I don't want to get my hopes up too much because we've seen a lot of these kids or these international guys come from different parts of the world, and a lot of them don't pan out because for whatever reason, maybe they're homesick or they've never seen a lot of these pitchers before. So it could definitely be a tough adjustment, but I think it's worth the gamble. I mean, the Padres aren't spending that much money on him. It's a 4-year deal, 28 mil. That's very affordable. And he's kind of an infielder. He played, I think, mostly shortstop, but they're planning on playing him at second base, which, should be fine. So I think it's worth a gamble. I mean, I've seen highlights, and he seems like he's, an exciting player. He's got the bat flip game down very well, so he'll fit in perfectly with Slam Diego. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm intrigued by it. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was a bit random, I think. I wasn't expecting. It just kind of came out of nowhere. Padres signed, international man for Korea. But yeah, I mean, I guess the only part I was just puzzled by was that, we have Jake Cronenworth at second base already, who should have won Rookie of the Year. And they just go out and sign a second baseman to like almost replace him already. So I guess from what I heard is that they want to move Cronenworth to the outfield. I don't know where he would even fit in there. Like do you even know?
Well, right, because their outfield's already filled with Myers, Grisham, and Tommy Pham's coming back. And from what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like the DH is coming back for the National League, unfortunately, which is ridiculous. I'm kind of pissed off about that. I don't know what Rob Manfred is thinking. Just leave the DH. Everybody loved it, it seemed like. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's kind of what I was thinking initially. It's like, wait a minute, that's where Jake Cronenworth played, was second base for the most part. He kind of played, a little bit of first base for Hosmer. I think he even filled in at shortstop for Tatis a couple times. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. But Matt, you know as well as I do, injuries happen, especially to our San Diego Padres. So chances are somebody, hopefully not, but somebody probably will get hurt in our infield at some point during the season. It could be very well be Kim. What we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, I feel like there's going to be a role for Jake. I'm not really too worried about that. I mean, best case scenario, you have a hell of a bench guy that can go out there and play whenever, pinch hit or whatnot, and you have full confidence that he's going to do the job. But I feel like it's a good problem to have because chances are you're going to have somebody go down with an injury, and if and when that does happen, I mean he can fill in for pretty much anybody on that infield.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely helps with depth, like that's for sure. But I don't know. I just feel like 28 million. I guess considering how much the Padres have spent isn't too much, but at the same time too, like that could have been used for like another pitcher. It maybe could have been used for the bullpen. You're just signed some guy from Korea, so you don't know. I mean, I hope he does good. Don't get me wrong. Like if he helps the team win, I'm all for it. But I don't know. I guess I'm just more in a wait and see approach with it. I do agree with you though. They're probably, hopefully not. They probably will be injuries though. So if that's the case, you can put him somewhere in the infield or the outfield. But I don't know. Interesting signing. That's all I gotta say.
Well, I mean, you got to remember the Padres general manager, AJ Preller, that's kind of his specialty, is international scouting. Like he's always scouting players from other countries. So it wasn't really that surprising. I know he's been trying to sign, seems like every, international star that comes out every offseason, he's like been in on him. It was just like when Ohtani, who's now, of course, on the Angels, was a free agent a couple of years ago. I mean, they were right in the mix for him. I mean, I believe it came down to the Angels and the Padres as the final two. So, I mean, Preller, he does his due diligence. He knows what he's doing. I believe in him. I have full confidence in him. And if he believes that, Kim's going to end up being a great player and transition to the big leagues very well, then all right, let's go for it. And I believe the Padres are the only team in baseball that has like a full scouting department in Korea, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I read about that. But so that makes me feel a little bit better about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like you said, at the very least, it will provide depth. And I'm sure, the combination of Preller and Tingler, probably find a good role for him. I don't know if it's going to be in the starting lineup like right away, but, over the course of a season, he might have a significant role. You never know.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's not a huge gamble because it's only $7 million a year. I mean, when you compare that to what they're paying, Machado and Hosmer, and he's making quite a bit of money in the next couple of years. I mean, it's not really that much of a risk, in my opinion. I think they can take on that contract, and if it doesn't work out, like that's going to suck, but it's not going to set them back for a bunch of years like a Hosmer Machado contract would.
Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line is that it's really good to see that they're going for it.
Absolutely.
Like,
we've been waiting our whole lives for this.
Just like a previous episode, if you have not seen it yet, by the way, the San Diego Sports Curse episode, go ahead and watch that one. But, we're dying for something good for San Diego sports. We only got one team, and this is it. So,
and we have no championships.
Exactly. So, it's good to see that they're really pushing that envelope. And, I think the bottom line, them getting Snell and Darvish, that's definitely a step in the right direction. They had to get pitching. They got it. And who knows? It might not be done yet, too.
Well, I was gonna say now it's time to go after Trevor Bauer.
Well, the thing is too is that we were just, as you were mentioning earlier, like the title window maybe might be 2, 3, or 4 years, but Bauer only wants a 1 or 2 deal to begin with.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah, honestly, if the Padres could somehow swing signing Bauer for just a 1 year or 2 year deal or whatnot, I mean, they got to look into it. I mean, I know it's going to cost them a lot, but if it's just a 1 year deal, man, you might as well go for it, right? I mean, Trevor
Yeah,
Bauer is, probably what, a top 3 pitcher in the game right now, you would say. I mean, he was just
he just
lights
won a
out
Cy
last
Young.
year for the Cincinnati Reds. I mean, he played in a ballpark there, the Great American Ballpark there in Cincinnati, that's like a bandbox. I mean, balls
Yeah,
are just flying out of that park left and right, and he just absolutely dominated in practically a little league field. So, I mean, if he could pitch well there, he can pitch well anywhere.
yeah, exactly. If they sign Trevor Bauer, like, I don't know, Dodger fans, you might be screwed, but but
Well, Matt, the only thing that I'm concerned about, well, there's two things. One, I think you alluded to earlier, their bullpen is still a question mark, and that's something that they need to address. So
yeah,
I mean, they can't be finished yet because their bullpen last year, many may have forgotten now, but the bullpen was not very good. So they need to address that. I don't know if they're going to re-sign Kirby Yates. I know Trevor Rosenthal, who they traded for last trade deadline. He's a free agent. So are they going to bring those guys back? So they got to address that first and foremost.
yeah, I agree. They got to address the bullpen. That's a must. Like, okay, who they have as far as like position players go, but bullpen, that's probably a must, if not even more so than Bauer. I mean, obviously, if they got Bauer, that would be huge, but you know, bullpens is what wins championships at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
that's what they should be pursuing. But to kind of circle back on the topic we were talking about earlier, I remember Ron Fowler, who used to be the CEO, who kind of recently stepped down. He mentioned that because of the pandemic, that the Padres were kind of suffering a little bit financially because of not having fans in the stands. But it's crazy how they're still making these moves anyway. So that's
Yeah.
why more so than anything, you have to tip their hat off for them.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows that they're committed. I mean, the Padres have never had an ownership group like this with Peter Seidler and Ron Fowler. Guys that are just like, you know what? Yeah, it kind of sucks to spend this much money, but we want to win. And we know how
Yeah,
much these San Diego sports fans have suffered with the LA Spanos is leaving town and the Padres being the laughing stock of baseball for over 50 years essentially. They want to give the fans of San Diego a team that they can be proud of. And believe me, I appreciate it. I know you appreciate it. And that's why I laugh at some of these fans that I follow on Twitter that are just like, I don't know. Should we be making these moves? It's like, seriously?
yeah.
I mean, we have to. What's the alternative? We just sit on our prospects and probably what, 80% of them don't really pan out or they don't end up being as great as we think that
Well,
they might be.
remember that used to be the thing back in the day, where it was always next year when these prospects came up and changed the Padres, and they said that for what, 50 years.
Yeah. And like I
So
talked about earlier, they only trade away one of their top 10 guys, Patino. They
yeah,
didn't trade Mackenzie Gore. They didn't trade, I always butcher his last name, Luis Capensanto or the catcher.
yeah, I was talking about.
You know who I'm talking about. They didn't trade any of
Yeah,
those guys. They still have Ryan Weathers. So there's still guys there
yeah.
that,
That's why I don't understand why, like, some people I find on the interwebs, why they're saying, "Oh, the Padres are selling the farm." No, no, like, especially the Darvish trade. That trade in particular, like, as you mentioned earlier, like, that's almost highway robbery. Like, you got to pull the trigger there, no doubt about it.
and the other thing is Preller is a master scout. I mean, he has scouted and drafted extremely well since he's been in San Diego. So even though he's trading away some of these young prospects, he's going to replenish. He's going to replenish the
Yeah,
farm. There's going to be another draft this year and next year and the following year. So yeah, I mean, it does, I guess, kind of suck to lose some of these guys, and if a couple of them end up being great players, oh well. But have all the confidence in the world that Preller is going to be able to replenish what he's lost. And honestly, like I said, I don't think they really have missed out on all that much to begin with. So
yeah, they're all in for 2021. They're all in. So
well, they're in for the next couple of years. Because like we said, I
yeah,
mean, some of these guys are locked in for the next couple of seasons. So the time to go after it is now. And then Clevenger, he's going to come back in 2022, hopefully.
yeah.
So there's a lot to look forward to in the next few seasons in San Diego. Matt, real quick before we wrap it up, one other concern, of course, is Dinelson Lamet. There really has been no update on his status at all. And I think that's really the biggest question mark. If the Padres have a healthy Dinelson Lamet heading into 2021, I believe they're a World Series contender. If he's going to miss any significant time or the entire season, you're looking at a completely different projection as far as where they're going to end up, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely a big factor. Because he, just like the pitchers they acquired, he was right up there with the Cy Young race. So having on board is huge, especially since, he already has that rapport with catcher Austin Nola. So, yeah, I mean, it's like any sports team in any sport, health always plays a factor, and it's unfortunate that he got hurt at the end of the year and didn't participate in last year's playoffs. But
yeah,
if he is healthy and ready to go, that's going to be a huge plus. I mean, he did great last year, and he'll be right up there with Snell and Darvish, 1, 2, 3 punch. So hopefully
yeah.
he'll be okay.
And I think some have argued that maybe the reason why the Padres, when acquired those two, was because they're concerned about Lamet and his health. I just hate
That,
the fact that we have no idea where he stands right now. I mean, it's the first of 2021, and we
yeah.
really have no update, which usually is
Well,
good news when it comes to the Padres.
yeah. Well, I apologize, but what country is he from? He's probably in one of those countries right now where he lives. So it's just kind of.
That's a good question. I don't
Is he
know.
Dominican, Puerto Rican? I don't know, but he's probably somewhere in Central or South America where he resides at. And the media obviously isn't there much, so.
Yeah. Looks
uh,
like he's from the Dominican.
Dominican, okay. Yeah, so he's just probably on the island right now, just doing his thing, spending time with the family, so.
Well,
But
whatever he's doing, I hope he's resting that arm, icing it every single night, and hopefully he'll be ready to go. Because if they have him, Matt, in the mix, I mean, 1 to 3, that's got to be the best pitching staff in baseball. I mean, I know the Dodgers have, Kershaw and Walker Buehler, but man, from top to bottom, if you have Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, and Dinelson Lamet, look out now.
I agree. But like always, like I just said, health. They gotta stay healthy.
Yeah.
You know.
And we also got to see who the last two guys will be that round out that rotation. Starters number 4 and 5. Is it going to be Paddock, who was absolutely garbage last year? Is he going to take a step forward? Because he was a guy a couple years ago that we both thought was going to be their ace. Because he was, through the minor leagues, he was their most dominating pitcher. So we had a lot of high hopes for Chris Paddock, and he just had an awful season last year. So I'm really intrigued to see if he's going to be able to bounce back. He seems like the type that's not going to take that lightly, and he's definitely going to work his ass off to get back to where he should be. But that's still a question mark, regardless. And then who's going to be the number 5 guy? I mean, are they going to call it Mackenzie Gore? I mean, I'd like to think he's pretty close to being ready to go, from what I've been hearing anyway. Or are they going to give Joey Lucchesi another chance, who they basically gave up on after a couple starts last year? So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with those last couple of spots in the rotation.
Well, hey, good problem to have. I mean, at least we're not looking at like how we were last year, where Paddock, who ended up having a terrible year, he was the opening day starter last year.
Yeah.
So he's way back at 4 or 5, where he probably should be.
Well, if he doesn't turn it around quick, man, he might be out of the rotation before you know it. I mean, he's got to step it up, because he wasn't fooling anybody at the end of last season.
Yeah, he definitely had the sophomore slump, needless to say. But
big time.
Yeah, and also Mackenzie Gore, who's been one of the best prospects in all of baseball. You know, if he actually does contribute next year, that could be a whole nother storyline itself. Like that might be a four-headed monster right there.
And then Ryan Weathers, of course, made his big league debut in the playoffs.
That's right.
So maybe he's in the mix. I mean, I was really impressed by him, man. I mean, he looked great. So
yeah,
maybe he's going to have a shot at the rotation too. So I mean, I agree. There's definitely a lot of possibilities there, and who knows? Maybe Preller will sign somebody else. Maybe there's a veteran out there that we're not talking about that he could plug in too. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, it should be exciting times in 2021 for our San Diego Padres.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, I think I'm going to go and wrap it up right there. I'm glad to see that we were able to get through this entire podcast without any difficulties. You came in perfectly
I'm kind of
fine.
shocked that it worked.
Yeah, I think you only cut out like once or twice, but it was only for like a second. So I'm pleasantly surprised that we were able to get through this all right.
Yeah, it took way longer just to set up than the actual show, but regardless, I'm just glad that we were able to get this done. Hopefully, it uploads okay. Although, I should address at the end. I did start off at the beginning wondering what episode this was right when you started recording, so that was kind of a goof. But
I think this is number 15, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. We'll roll with that.
We'll find out. So yes, folks, Matt and I are kind of our New Year's resolution for 2021. Neither one of us really believe in New Year's resolution, but I guess a goal I would say for this year is we want to do more shows, more frequent shows. I don't know if we can get into a routine of doing one a week, at least once or twice a month, Matt. I think that's a pretty easy bar to go after. So we're going to try to, do these shows on a more regular basis. We're going to start hopefully getting some guests on, assuming that Zoom will cooperate like it did tonight. So exciting times. We hope that you will continue to join us here on Big Mouth Willie Bass Podcast.
Well said.
And next episode, we'll be diving into the country club that we used to work at.
Oh boy.
You will not want to miss that.
That's good. There's gonna be fireworks on that show. That's all I gotta say.
The state penitentiary,
the plantation.
Yeah, so make sure
that's
you
gonna be
stay tuned for that. Yeah. It's gonna be a doozy. Until then, I'm Ryan Willis.
And I'm Matt Willis.
Take care. Happy New Year.